It's no secret that our right to vote is the foundation of our American democracy, but sometimes the process can feel overwhelming or unsafe. That's where Vote Without Fear comes in. Whether you're voting for the first time or the 10th time, this platform has everything you need to feel confident and informed. From where to vote, how to vote safely, and what to expect at the polls, voting is your voice. And with Vote Without Fear, you can use it without hesitation. Visit votewithoutfear.com today and take the first step towards secure, empowered voting. Remember, it's your vote, and you deserve to vote without fear. That's votewithoutfear.com. Welcome back to A Fresh Story, the podcast where we have conversations about brave decisions to start over again. I'm Olivia.
And I'm Jenny, and we're so glad you're here today.
Hi everyone, Olivia here. I wanted to pop in with a quick note about today's episode. I met Jim Hurst in about 2015 because he is an award-winning bluegrass musician. He is an IBMA award-winning bluegrass musician, bluegrass guitarist. If you don't know IBMA, which many of you probably don't, that stands for the International Bluegrass Music Association. It's pretty much the equivalent to the Grammys in the bluegrass world. Jim has had a long, long career in bluegrass music and different types of music. And he had posted back then on Facebook that he was looking for some marketing and PR help. My ex-husband, who was in the bluegrass community for a long time, saw this ad and I answered the call. And Jim was my first PR client. I used to help promote his shows. And I wanted to just tell a quick little funny story. I don't even know if Jim remembers this. Maybe you do, Jim. Jim came up to New York from the South where he lived to play a show, and my ex and I went into the city to go see him play. We've seen him a couple times. We saw him many times. And we invited Jim to come stay in our house, which was like a really big deal. He is, like I said, very, very well known in the bluegrass community. And my ex-husband was thrilled with this, very exciting. And so Jim came and he stayed overnight with us. We had moved into the house not that long before that. And so, a couple days later, Jim left and he called me to say thank you for being such good hosts. And then at the end of the call, he said, "There's something coming in the mail for you." And I was like, "Thank you. That was so kind of you." And so a couple days later in the mail, this big box comes, big box. And I open it up and Jim had bought us a standing toilet paper holder because we had nowhere to put our toilet paper in our bathroom because we had never put up the toilet paper holder. We used that standing toilet paper holder until I sold the house. So I just wanted to say thank you, Jim, for the toilet paper holder. And more than that, I wanted to add too that this episode is really about conversations. It's about being open to having conversations. And I wanted to be very clear because we always have these hard conversations, these difficult conversations at Fresh Starts. I came into this conversation with some preconceived notions. I assumed things about Jim's past and what he had maybe stood for. And before we recorded this episode, Jim and I were talking and I said to him, the reason that I wanted to have you on to talk was because I've noticed the evolution of the way that you speak about things on Facebook when it comes to politics. And he said, why did you use the word evolution? And it dawned on me in that moment that maybe he didn't stand for the things that I thought that he had stood for. And I assumed those things based on the fact that he's a white man and the fact that he's, was from a certain location in the country. And as you listen in this episode, I was not right. And I wanted to just, say that. Sometimes we have preconceived notions about people. Having these conversations opens up a really, really important dialogue because I learned a lot about Jim in this episode and Jim was incredibly honest. And I think this is probably one of the most important things you will ever listen to. And I just appreciate Jim for showing up and being brave and having these conversations because that is all we can give each other is being brave and having these conversations. So enjoy this episode with Jim. And I highly, highly recommend going and checking out all of Jim's beautiful music as well. Okay. Hello. We're here with my friend Jim Hurst, which I'm going to share, Jim, how we know each other, which is kind of a long and winding road.
Yeah.
So years and years ago, Jim was, I would say, my first PR client, like really ever. I used to do a lot of the work. I actually just saw in my Facebook memories last night, it came up with like, I don't know how many years ago that was, 9 years ago or something. It said like,
Something like that.
I was promoting you in Naples, Florida. So we did a lot of promotion work together, and you actually came and stayed at our house once. So it has been a long time, but we reconnected. I reached out to Jim because I wanted to have a conversation about what's happening kind of in the political arena right now. For those of you listening, Jim is a white man and he lives where, Jim, where are you?
Nashville, Tennessee.
Okay, Nashville. So I thought it'd be an interesting perspective to just have a quick conversation kind of about what's happened in the last, 8 years or so and where Jim sees the future is going as well. But I'm going to let Jim introduce yourself a little bit here. Jim, so who are you?
Well, I'm my mom's favorite son, even though my younger brother don't agree with that. But I grew up in Toledo, Ohio. Mom and dad come from the Appalachian region. They moved us all up north for schooling and jobs. And in 88, my wife and I, we moved our kids down to Nashville because I'm a musician, or at least I tried to be.
Mm-hmm.
And she told me one day, she said, "Look, if you want to do this, let's move to Nashville." And, it was pretty brave of her to say that. It wasn't long after the affirmative action kicked in. Affirmative action was needed. It was to allow minorities and women to get a fair shot at jobs. Unfortunately, as everything happens, when you make one move, there's 3 or 4 other moves that don't get moved, or they get moved in the opposite direction. And so people like me and my brother and friends of mine, if we didn't already have a job, couldn't get a job. So my brother and I, we tried truck driving together as team drivers. We tried to buy a truck, and it broke down more often than it drove. So in 88, we moved to South. We moved to Nashville, and we've been down here ever since, my wife and I and our kids. And now our kids have kids. And I'm happy to be in Middle Tennessee. I live in Nashville area and have been since we moved up to Kentucky for a few years. My wife and I, after the kids got old enough and moved out. It's been I've been a full-time musician since we moved down here. When I say full-time, well, I should say a professional musician, because full-time that's like a lie right there when I say it. But most musicians, they either work in the studio in Nashville, and they do have kind of a full-time job. They work during the week and they get their weekends off. Well, traveling musicians, road musicians like myself, we go in the studio and work for people or for ourselves, but the rest of the time we're out on the road working on the weekends. So full-time is it's like an oxymoron. It is what I do. It's the main thing I do. But it's really the only thing I want to do. But, I have to provide for a home and stuff like that. So it's been a wonderful since 88. So this is 46 years this year. No, 36 years. And so it's been a wonderful trip to kind of travel around. I've been on cruises, been to Japan, been to Europe, been to Canada, been to Mexico, been different places playing music. And fortunately, I'm going places where when I perform, people are sitting there and they want to be there. I don't drink, I don't smoke, so I never played the bar scene. It wasn't my scene. I know a lot of musicians make their living doing that. More power to you. But I'm just not into that scene, so I always tried to play other things. Play festivals, there's bluegrass clubs that offer beer or whatever. Yeah. But I'm talking about the main reason that they're there is not alcohol. It's music. Right. And so I'm okay with that, even though it's a little uncomfortable. So I've been working with different bands. When I moved to town, first 2 jobs was country music artist, actually the first 4 jobs. Then I started working with Claire Lynch and the front string band. Missy Raines and I had a duet for a while. I've worked with other bluegrass artists, Tim O'Brien, Mark Schatz, John Cowan, David Grisman. And I've done my own thing, the Jim Hurst Bluegrass Band, the Jim Hurst Trio. I do solo shows. I've done duet things with Roberto Dadovecchia and different people. And I've got albums that kind of reflect most of my solo career. When I say solo, my own music, as opposed to working for other people. I think I've got 7 coming up on 8 albums just doing that. Wow. And so the new album is called Travels and Time, and it won't be out till after the first of the year, but the first single just came out on the 3rd of October. It's called One More Lonesome Train, and you can find it on your digital
Yeah, we'll
downloads.
link to
Jim
it.
Hurst,
Yeah.
One More Lonesome Train. With all that, let me just kind of preface what we're getting ready to talk about the tumultuous political scene that's happened really since 16, 15 probably.
Yeah.
And it's because of, in my opinion, one person. Everybody's got their opinion. I'm just going to share mine, but
we would love that.
I think a lot of us were private. Nobody needs to know how I vote or what party I'm registered to, or if I'm not going to vote, and that's American freedom.
Mm-hmm.
We have a freedom in this country to do as we like, at least most of us. Mm-hmm. I'm speaking as a white man, but I'm also speaking for other people too, in my way.
Yep.
Since I've been voting, women were able to vote, and so were blacks. Wasn't long before that, women couldn't do it, or blacks.
Yep.
And I'm always thinking we have a lot of rights in the Bill of Rights. We have the Constitution protects a lot of things. And as we've seen with the Supreme Court, it can be altered quickly.
Yeah.
And so I'm concerned about that. But the rights of our citizens continue. They're really good rights, and we have a lot of rights. But we have to also be very stalwart to protect those rights, because there are those in our country that don't get the same treatment, even though the rights are there.
Yeah.
As you as a woman know, maybe, hopefully not, but my wife has known that if you're working for a man in the office, there ain't much you can say. And if they want to get, my wife has never been mistreated, but I do know people who have had little moments where
a lot of people.
The boss has taken liberties that they shouldn't have and had nothing to do with the office. And so we have to continually bolster and buttress up those rights. And we have to alter those rights sometimes, but it needs to be done in the proper way. Yeah. We can't have one person demonstrate that most of the rights, if not all of them, are not correct. We need to change them.
Yeah.
With all that said, we can get into more of that if you want, Olivia. But the musicians that I know, we don't ever share who we're voting for, who we don't vote for. Even if we vote, what party we're affiliated. However, this most recent round with, let's say, subject A, or subject T. I don't want to say too much about that, but I think a lot of us musicians are torn between saying things to other musicians, and in some cases, even other family members, and friends. That doesn't mean all musicians think the way I do. We're such a plethora of different ideologies and followings, and religious or non, and what kind of religion. I mean, just like it's a cross section of society, and some of us are the dregs. I'm probably one of the dregs, but as how other people view us, I've had somebody say, "Well, what do you do for a real living? What's your real job?" And that's fine, I think the way they said it was not wasn't the best way to form the question, but the interest was there. So, well, what else do you do? It would have been a better way to address that question. But recently, I say within the last year, I know the more of what the musicians that I know more about what they're afraid of, what they're worried about, and what they're voting against, what they're voting for now than I have since I've been in the music business.
Yeah.
And that is I guess I'm rambling on. So
no, that's exactly what I wanted to talk about. No, I love everything you're saying, and that's literally why I wanted to have you come on, is because I said to you before we started to record, we've been connected on social media for a long time, and though we haven't chatted in many years, I've watched your I used this word before, but evolution of like just starting to speak out a little bit more about this. And you do a beautiful job of, you're not pro or anti anything. You are a very fact-based right, science-based person. And so, and I
be.
want to just say also, and because I think this is important, you're a very spiritual, religious person also. Like you are a Christian man, right? You talk about that. And also, right, you can be both and, right? You can believe in facts and science and also be, Christian. And so I'm just curious, Jim, you're in the South. What was it like, when I would say we won't use names, but when the situation changed in 2016, did you feel within your community a shift, especially with the other, I would say, men in your community?
No, honestly, I didn't notice it so much.
Okay.
Matter of fact, in my family, we, at that point, now I don't mean my immediate family. In my immediate family, my wife and I, we talked about it. My daughter, my son, there's conversation, and my son-in-law. But in the music business, there wasn't a whole lot of that conversation going on. Somebody might say, well, did you hear that speech? I thought that was a good point or whatever. And it was kind of like, it's what it's. Did you hear about the weather's going to be beautiful today kind of thing? Right. So back then in 15, 16, there wasn't a lot of discourse, at least from what I remember.
Yeah. Okay. So what do you think changed? Because now you're saying that in the last year, and I thought that was such an interesting statement you made, that more than ever, and you've been in the music career for a long time, and that you're hearing things from people. So what do you think changed? I mean, this is just your opinion. I'm just curious.
Well, COVID happened. That was a huge divide. When COVID hit, the current president at the time didn't handle it very well at all. Matter of fact, I think he mishandled it as bad as anybody could, in my opinion. He did do some good. I'm not one of those that say, well, he didn't do anything good. I'm not going to say that, because he did do some good. He also did some really bad. Like, he sent things to Putin as if Putin couldn't get his own stuff. Well, and then people in our country needed those things. Yeah. It was, I don't have any links to facts or anything, but I do know that that's been going around. Yeah. But I think that one president, and of course, I'm coming from my position of a white male. I'm just turned 70 this year. Yeah. I'm a blue collar guy. I've been mostly a Democrat, but since 2004, I've been kind of a non-chosen. And when they say independent, I mean, that sounds like it's a party. Yeah. I've just been non-chosen. I didn't choose either D or R, because I think both parties have issues, and voters of both parties form an allegiance to their party. So much so, and you're probably going to maybe edit this out, I don't know, but because I'm a Christian, Jesus is my guy, right? Along with many others, Mother Mary and all of them. But I say this, so I used to say it kind of tongue in cheek, but now I'm kind of saying it really more meaningful. If Jesus ran as a Democrat, Republicans, the hard party loyal Republicans would vote against him. And if Jesus ran as a Republican, the hard party liner Democrats would vote against him. It's an amazing thing that's happened since 16. It has, I think, the terrain of the political spectrum since Nixon. I was around. I remember Nixon. Remember all of that happened, and I remember Clinton. I know all that. What's happened in the last 12 years, really. Yeah. At least 8 years. It is amazing. And the fact that it's divided the country into two different groups. And the two different groups, it seems like the radical side, the most red of the red is driving Republicans, and the most blue of the blue is driving the Democrats. Yeah. I'm in the middle. Yeah. And a lot of that doesn't help me. When you're talking about all the extremes, all the hard right and left, they're talking about every little thing that has to happen for them to be happy. That's not how our country works, in my opinion. Right. We need to have good things for more people, not less. I don't agree with the hard line of either side. I don't. I'm a blue collar person. I'm somebody that works every day. I live hand to mouth for the most part. And so the wealthy right doesn't help me.
Yeah.
I'm a Christian man. I'm heterosexual. I'm private with my sexual ideology, and I don't talk about it in public.
Yeah.
So the farthest left, there, I can't get into that neither. Agreeing to disagree has kind of been lost. And so,
Yeah.
with all that said, musicians now are starting to speak to one another. When I was at IBMA a couple weeks ago, a guitar player friend of mine I thought was a different party, a different ideology.
Yeah.
I admired that person as a musician, as a songwriter, as a singer, as a band member.
Yeah.
As a teacher, he's a great person.
Yeah.
I found that he and I are really close in our desires of what America should be. And I've heard that from other people. And it's
interesting.
It's heartening,
Yeah.
but it's also remarkable that the conversation is being had, because we feel like if we don't have this conversation, who knows what's going to happen in 2025.
I agree with that. So that being said, and I think that's really the important conversation, is to have the conversation, right? But that's hard to do. So, what do you do, like you personally? On your Facebook, let's say, for example, you have a lot of people that are not agreeing with you. How much time and energy do you feel like you need to spend? Are you looking to, you're probably not going to change these people's minds, right?
No.
But again, you want them to see, like, it has become, like, these are not the truth, right? These are lies. This is not the actual thing that's happening in our world. So how do you feel like in your gut, how much energy do you put into kind of chatting with these people about this?
Well, that's a good question. Some of the people of recent, couple of posts I put out, gotten feedback, and a lot of people that, some of them I don't even know, are saying, yeah, I agree with you, and here's another thing. And so it's a conversation. There's a couple of people in particular, though, recently, that I know. One of them I know, and they're just pointing out bad facts. I just want to say they're bad facts. I'm not going to say they're lying, because they're probably ignorant. They're probably listening to the talking points of whatever radio station, TV station, political candidate they're listening to.
Right.
And it's sad to me, because I don't feel like they have the mechanisms to filter out what's true and what ain't.
Ooh,
they
I
have
like that.
And I'll say this, and I'll get back to your point. I feel like these people feel a certain way, and their candidate bolsters that, says the things that they already feel. They don't think about checking themselves on other sources, watching other news stations, listen to other radio or web things. They're listening to the same 4, 5, 6 things that exactly preach they're drinking the Kool-Aid. And I hate to say that, because that's a kind of a saying. But it's basically what it is. They're not expanding their mind to say, okay, well, what if I'm wrong? When you and I grew up and went to school, that was one of the first things we're supposed to do in math, in science. We're supposed to double check, make sure that what we're saying is true.
Well, media literacy.
And so they don't do that, right? So with all of that said, I share what I feel like I need to share. And a lot of times I've shared things that are a little more pointed, and I got pushback. And I get that, and I appreciate it. People I admire have said, "Oh man, you shouldn't posted that." That may not be right, and it's gonna make people feel bad, whatever they said. But the other thing is I'm a musician, I'm an entertainer, and unfortunately, in this country, entertainers like Taylor Swift and whoever, they get maligned because they say something. Well, Amanda the teacher, and Joe the plumber, and Bill the truck driver, and Fred the bank president, they all have a right to say what they want to say. Why is it entertainers are maligned with that? Why are we supposed to shut up about it? Maybe it's because we use social media more than some of those other people I'm talking about. But I have a right to my voice. You have your right to your voice. Everybody has a right to their voice. And if you don't agree, pass it on by. So with that said, what I do is I pick my battles. And I try not to get personal. However, this one I actually reached out on Messenger and told this other guy, listen, you're, you basically told him you're wrong. You're saying the wrong things. And
Yeah.
here's a couple of links to prove that,
Good.
you know, and
Good.
if I see the guy, I'll shake his hand or hug his neck or whatever. But
Right.
the conversation, it's also this field that we're talking over.
Yeah.
It gives people bravado because
100%.
we can see one another and we know one another.
Yeah.
But when it's this black and white text in this box on this screen,
Yep.
nobody cares if somebody knows who they are because they're going to say what they want, you know?
Yep.
So that doesn't help. And also my overall point is to say things that I think might move the ball for some of the people. Like you said, you're not going to change somebody who's a radical right. You're not going to change somebody who's a radical left.
Yep.
I'm going to move the ball in the middle a little bit, maybe. Or I'm going to find out that I'm wrong, and that moves my ball.
Right.
And it moves my ball to even do that, because before I even post it like you do, I got to check myself in the mirror. I got to know. I got to feel confident about my thoughts and my beliefs about this. Otherwise, I'm just making a fool out of myself. And I probably do anyway.
Well,
but so to do it on social media, I think my point is to help the narrative be a little more honest and based more in fact.
Yeah.
And not necessarily push. And I detest one of the candidates. You can guess which one that is.
Yeah.
And I feel like the country is going to be in bad shape if that candidate gets in office. So that's driving me as well. And I'm 70. My career is not as active as it was when I was 40. And so I feel like, okay, well, maybe I can sacrifice my career to help this go along better. That ain't my mission. But if that's what happens, I'm okay.
Yeah. And I mean, to be frank, Jim, you have a daughter, you have granddaughters, I think, right? This is not about
3 granddaughters and a grandson, a son and a daughter. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is not about you, right? And I think that's what I keep reminding people too. You know, yes, your vote is your vote, but it's about, it's about the future. So I guess if you wouldn't mind sharing, and you obviously do not need to say who you're voting for, but if you could talk to other white men right now and say the qualities of the future that you would like to vote for, what would that look like? Like, what are we going for here? What's the mission that we can all keep fighting for?
Well, I'm an independent voter, as I think I mentioned. I used to be a Democrat. I mean, I will be voting completely blue this year because I feel like there's too many people on the other side that are trying to make this all about one person.
Yeah.
I don't like that. And I think going back to Hillary, when you was talking about Hillary, I didn't feel like she was the right person for the job for the Democrats. And I knew that Trump wasn't the right person for the job. So I voted for Bernie Sanders. Now, Bernie's way left of me.
Yeah.
But his integrity and his experience was head and shoulders above the other two candidates, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Now, it also took votes away from Hillary. Anybody that voted for Bernie took votes from Hillary. But I felt like Hillary, as smart as she is, and she's actually proven to people more now in this most recent election how much smarter she is than what she appeared like in 16. And she's got her ghost in the closet. Kamala got hers. Trump's got his, as we all know, most of those.
I mean, politicians,
Their politicians are human, right? But I just felt like she was the wrong person at the wrong time. I am all for women having every opportunity. I think the future holds that there's more freedoms and less wealthy privilege. The wealthy needs to be protected somewhat because they own the companies we buy from, we work with or whatever, but they need to pay their fair share of taxes. Women need every opportunity that a man does. Minorities need a legal work, the citizens.
Yeah.
Illegal immigrants, to me, that's that's non-starter. I think we have so much here to offer to every citizen. And what's happening is that the political scene and different like local politics, local law enforcement, local this and local that is changing it to make sure that whatever their chosen race, their chosen gender, their chosen political affiliation, their chosen religious affiliation, they're doing that to squash that, to control that. And that and most of goes back to my Bible. The love of money is the root of all evil. And
Yeah.
almost everything we're talking about has to do with amassing wealth or having something to do with gathering money or not spending money and making sure that that person doesn't get money, whoever that person is.
Right.
And so I want my daughters and my granddaughters, my grandson to grow up in an environment where they can do whatever they want and they have the ability to go for it. They don't have to walk through the shadow of death in order to even get a shot at it. You know, I think the cream of the crop is going to rise on its own, and given the chance. It's those that are more in the middle. They're going to be office workers or truck drivers or maybe even airline pilots and doctors. But there's some of us going to be blue collar workers. That's what I was. I was a truck driver. I worked in a factory. And so those people are not talked about. You remember they were talking about Joe the mechanic or Joe the plumber in one of the political talking points. Yeah, Joe the plumber does need to be talked about. So does Amanda the babysitter. So does everybody else.
Yeah.
But they want to talk about the bankers and they want to talk about the politicians. They want to talk about the organizations and the corporations.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to talk about the average everyday people.
No,
Especially
and I
a
think
single mom raising 2 or 3, 4, 5, 6 kids.
No, it's and I think what you're saying is this radical notion, right, that everybody deserves the same shot, right? And that's hard for a lot of people to wrap their head around because they don't see people as the same, right? And as deserving of the equal rights as everybody have. I really, really, really appreciate you sharing all of that, and I'm excited to share this with people because I think it's important to have different perspectives. And so much of social media, we're in our bubble, right? Whatever your bubble is. And it's important to hear, what I really appreciate about what you're talking about is that you are a multifaceted person. You have so many parts of you. And yet, you stay true to your values and what you want for you and your family and for your friends and the citizens. And I just appreciate you sharing all of that. So, for anybody listening, I would highly, highly recommend going and checking out Jim's music. You also didn't mention that you are an IBMA winner. And I know this from doing work with you. I think, are you two-time maybe? Two-time winner?
Yeah, twice. IBMA Guitar Player of the Year.
So it's the small potatoes, Jim. And so
it's huge to me. I got
I'm kidding.
awards that's sitting on top of my bookshelf, and they're going to stay there until I'm gone.
No, I remember. I think I was working with you when you won your second one. It was a big deal. IBMA, for anybody that doesn't know, is like the Grammys for the bluegrass world. So Jim's big potatoes here. He's not small potatoes.
Well, thank you.
I appreciate all of that. Do you have any last words you want to share before we let you get back to your music?
Yes. And thank you for this, Olivia. It's great catching up with you a little bit, and I hope you're well.
Thanks.
Say hello to the kiddos for me.
I will.
My dad, my younger brother and I, when we were growing up in Toledo, Ohio, my mom and dad, both of them worked in factories. And we didn't have much. We didn't feel like we needed anything. There were people who were had less than we did. But we would do our chores and we'd get an allowance. I think we got 50 cents a week or something. And this is back in the 1900s, if that tells anybody anything. But my brother and I would do our chores. And on Saturday, we would want to walk down to the local carryout, the local store, and get some snacks, candy and a pretzel rod and something to drink. We could do all that for 25 cents. Seriously. It was really good times. There was struggles, but it was good times. And so my dad said, okay, well, you guys go straight there and straight back, because where we lived wasn't the worst part of town, but there were also some people in that neighborhood that were trying to do wrong. My dad was a World War II veteran, and he also saw things when he was in America that made him worry about where we lived. Not at that point, he wasn't living where we live. Anyway, that's a long story. So we asked to go down to the store, and he said, sure, go straight there and straight back. I said, so can we get some money? He goes, oh, I see how that works. So he pulled his hand out. He had a whole handful of coins. Back then, dollars and coins was a big deal. He said, okay, take a little and leave a little. Now, for most kids, I think, at least some kids, they would have never thought about that. But it hit me like a fresh wind or something. It's like, take a little and leave a little. I take a little bit for me and leave some for him. And my brother did the same thing. And I think about that often, Olivia. I think in this country, we don't take a little and leave a little. Even when we're in line at McDonald's, we want to be first. Even if we're going to wherever store or we're in line in traffic, we just got to go down the berm to get in front of everybody. We can't just take our part and be happy. And then when it comes to politics, that's what's happening. And in politics, it's been that way for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, the Democrats want everything or the Republicans want everything, and nobody wants to do a fair thing. You know, the government was built around fair representation of both sides of the issues. And sometimes there's more than both sides, but specifically both sides.
Yeah.
I think the other thing I'll say, to finish that thought, do what you can to help yourself, but don't take the next person's point either. Don't take their money. Don't take their position. Yeah, you got to keep ascending in whatever job you're in. You got to make it the best for your family. But in your neighborhood, you know, somebody needs their grass cut. Ask them if they need their grass cut. You know, this part of this, I got a razor line right down my property line, and I will never touch that grass because even though there's only 12 inches left, I could cut that with my lawnmower. But the other thing happens, if you cut that person's lawn, they're like, why'd you do that? You know, it's like, just don't touch me, don't tread on me, don't do this, don't do that. I got mine, you know. Anyway, I wish that could be better. However, the other thing is, I feel like if we took the time to vet out our opinions and our positions on things, not just politics, just think about, okay, so if I think this way, what's the other side?
Yeah.
And like I said, in school, when we were in school, or when I was in school for sure, my civics class in our math and science classes, they said, look, you got to live in the other person's shoes for a minute to really understand why it is they like what they like and why they don't like what you like. And so by doing that, either changes your position or it bolsters your position, but it gives you a certain amount of apathy or sensitivity to what they have, you know, hopefully more sensitivity. And so we did a couple of experiments in civics class. And that point, I was going on the other side of the aisle and trying to bolster that, you know, say something about that candidate. So I learned a lot about that candidate. Nowadays, there's so many different news sources that are telling lies right out of their face.
Yeah.
People need to check other news sources. I listen to every one of them. There's a couple of them. One of them in particular has lost their news category because of a $787 million fine. That should say something to people who watch that channel. But it's like that no matter. Because what they're saying is what I want to hear. Well, the ignorant, I call it chosen ignorance.
Yeah.
They're choosing to be ignorant about things because that goes against how they feel. Well, they could change their point of view to a more intelligent, more fair, more honest place if they just listen to other news sources.
Yeah.
I get most of my news nowadays online.
Yeah. Heather
Cox Richardson is a hero to me. She doesn't tell anybody who she's voting for. She's a scholar, and she shares her thoughts in podcasts and stuff. I like the Midas Touch Network. I like things like that. So I think if everybody would take a little and leave a little, I think that would be helpful in our society.
I love that. Well, I want to end the podcast on a positive note. So typically when we end our podcasts, the last question we ask, and I didn't even tell you we were going to talk about that. So the last question is, what was the last thing that you ate and really loved, Jim?
Well, for food wise, I'd have to go with, I think it's been a while, but I love breakfast. There's a chain of restaurants called First Watch, and I love their breakfast. You got different options, and I love their French toast. I shouldn't eat it, but I get it.
I love
French toast. They call it artisan French toast. It's done with artisan bread, and it's not dipped in egg. It's dipped in custard, and I just love it.
Ooh, that sounds amazing.
But the last meal I love because not because of the food, but including the food, is last night. My daughter and son-in-law, and their two daughters, they spent the day with me yesterday, and we went to Cracker Barrel, and I had home-style chicken dinner at Cracker Barrel.
Well, there's not much better in life than Cracker Barrel with your grandchildren. So I love that. Well, Jim, we appreciate you so much. And for anybody that wants to go listen to Jim's amazing music, Jim is one of I'm going to just brag about you for a second, Jim, one of the world's finest bluegrass guitarists. And I think you probably didn't even list half the musicians that you've played with. So go check him out. He will be in all the links will be in the show notes. And Jim, I just appreciate you being on, this team as we try to make the world a better place. So thank you for sharing all that today.
I'm happy we're on the same team, and it's great to see you again, and you're welcome. Thanks for asking me, Olivia. I mean, I think these conversations help, and so Thank you for what you're doing. Keep up the good work, girlfriend. You're always really good at whatever it is you do.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks. Thank you for listening to today's episode. A Fresh Story podcast is produced by Fresh Starts Registry, the first and only platform for everything you need to begin again, from home items to Hype Team and everything in between. You can learn more and read today's show notes at afreshstory.com. Are you ready to use your vote? Whether it's your first time or you've done it before, Vote Without Fear is here to help you feel prepared and safe every step of the way. From understanding how to vote securely to knowing where your nearest polling location is, this platform has all of the information you need. Don't let uncertainty hold you back. Your voice matters. Head to votewithoutfear.com and make sure that you're ready to vote with confidence and peace of mind. Remember, it's your vote, and you deserve to vote without fear. That's votewithoutfear.com.